There is a moment in every man's life when he feels something slipping away, an invisible energy, a subtle death that occurs not in the body but in the soul. It is not the loss of semen itself that weakens him. It is the unconscious act of surrendering his sacred power without understanding its purpose. Most men live as victims of a force they never attempt to understand. They chase pleasure like moths to a flame, unaware that the fire they worship is devouring the very essence that could make them gods among men. The deadly mistake is not that they release their seed, it is that they do so mindlessly, mechanically, driven by an unseen hunger that rules them. Desire, when unconscious, enslaves. But when faced and integrated, it becomes divine. Every impulse you feel, every surge of lust is not your enemy. It is raw energy, life itself, demanding to be refined. The ignorant man represses it and becomes twisted by guilt. The indulgent man obeys it and becomes its slave. But the awakened man observes it, studies it, and transmutes it into creation, focus, and spiritual power. The tragedy is that modern men are told only two paths exist: indulgence or denial. Neither leads to mastery. True retention is not about clutching your seed in fear. It is about holding your awareness in fire. It is the art of standing in the storm of your desire without drowning in it. To retain is not to hoard. It is to transform. The seed must rise from the loins to the mind, from the body to the soul. The shadow of sexuality lurks in every man. Ignore it, and it will destroy you in secret. Acknowledge it, and it will forge you into something higher. Your lust is not your downfall, it is your test. Those who cannot face it will forever bow before it. Those who master it will command the world. So the deadly mistake that destroys your semen retention is not the loss of fluid. It is the loss of awareness. It is the failure to see that this energy was never meant to be caged or wasted, but understood, respected, and reborn as wisdom, strength, and creation. The man who learns this truth no longer fears his desire. He directs it. He channels it. He becomes the living bridge between heaven and earth, where instinct is not destroyed but divinized. There is a silent erosion happening inside the modern man, an erosion not of muscle or willpower, but of his very psychic core. He believes that his strength lies in his physical control, in his ability to resist the bodily act of release, yet he remains unaware that his true weakness is not in the act itself, but in the unconscious state from which it arises. The deadly mistake that destroys the practice of semen retention is not the loss of semen, but the loss of consciousness surrounding it. It is the blindness with which one relates to the most primal force in his nature. When a man treats his desire as a purely physical problem, something to fight, suppress, or count in days, he misses the point entirely. The true battle is not waged between man and his body, but between his awareness and his unconscious instincts. Lust in its rawest form is not evil. It is simply energy, pure, unformed, and indifferent. It becomes destructive only when the mind is asleep, when one identifies with the instinct instead of mastering it. To retain semen without awakening consciousness is like guarding a treasure chest without knowing what it contains. Eventually, the weight of ignorance will crush the very spirit that sought discipline. This misunderstanding creates a psychological loop. Repression breeds tension. Tension breeds obsession, and obsession inevitably leads to collapse. The man who represses his instincts in fear becomes consumed by them. The man who indulges them without reflection becomes drained by them. Both paths are ruled by the same mistake, an unconscious relationship with desire. The difference lies only in the direction of defeat. True mastery is not abstinence, it is transformation. The aim is not to avoid temptation, but to awaken through it. When you experience desire, something profound is occurring within you. It is life announcing itself, an immense force rising from the depths of the unconscious demanding expression. Most men translate that energy immediately into physical terms. They seek release. But what if, instead of obeying the body's reflex, one observed it, breathed through it, and allowed the fire to rise upward into awareness? The energy that once sought only physical release would begin to refine itself into focus, intuition, and creation. The same energy that drives a man toward the body of another, when elevated, becomes the power that drives him toward his highest self. The unconscious man lives as prey to his impulses. He calls his habits freedom, though they chain him to the same cycles of stimulation and depletion. He chases pleasure, mistaking it for vitality, yet feels emptier with every indulgence. He does not realize that what he seeks is not the pleasure of release, but the peace of connection to himself, to his own inner source. Every unconscious act of lust is an attempt to reunite with that source, yet because he seeks it outwardly, he loses more of himself in the process. The conscious man, on the other hand, does not reject his desire. He studies it, he feels it fully, but without being consumed. In doing so, he begins to recognize that desire is a mirror, showing him what parts of his psyche are still fragmented or unintegrated. It is never the object of desire that holds the power. It is the projection of one's own unlived potential onto that object. When you feel pulled by desire, you are being shown where your power sleeps. To recognize this is to begin reclaiming your inner authority. Every act of unconscious release is a surrender of energy that could have become awareness. It is as though you are handing over your crown for a moment of comfort. But when you remain conscious within that fire, when you breathe, when you watch, when you let the energy rise instead of spill, you begin to sense a profound shift. The same force that once enslaved you becomes the very current that liberates you. The sexual energy that once demanded release now fuels your thoughts, your words, your creations. You begin to realize that this power was never about withholding. It was about transforming. This is the essence of psychological alchemy, the art of turning base instinct into higher consciousness. To retain is to refuse to live unconsciously. It is to say, I will no longer act out of habit. I will act out of awareness. The body remains what it is, a vessel of instinct and life. But the man who observes, who channels, who understands, no longer identifies with his impulses. He stands apart from them, watching as they rise and fall, and in that distance he gains dominion over them. Sexual energy, in its raw form, is neither moral nor immoral. It is simply potent. What gives it direction is consciousness. Without consciousness, it destroys. With consciousness, it creates. The same fire that consumes the unconscious man illuminates the awakened one. That is why the ancient sages spoke not of repression, but of transmutation. The goal was never to deny the fire, but to build a vessel strong enough to contain it, to refine it, to use it for something greater than momentary pleasure. The mistake, therefore, is not physical, it is psychological. The danger lies not in the act, but in the sleep. When you lose awareness, you lose yourself. When you awaken, every drop of that same energy becomes sacred again. So the next time you feel desire stirring within you, do not flee from it, and do not obey it blindly. Sit with it, watch it. Let it reveal what it truly wants. Not release, but realization. Remember that you are not here to suppress life, nor to squander it, but to understand it. There is a subtle misconception that semen retention is merely a physical act, a matter of willpower, a tally of days, a challenge against the body's instinctual demands. Yet those who see it this way fail to grasp its profound psychological and spiritual dimensions. The retention of sexual energy is not a simple exercise in abstinence. It is a deliberate engagement with one of the most powerful forces within us. Semen, in this sense, is not just fluid. It is concentrated life energy, a primal expression of vitality that, when consciously directed, has the capacity to shape a man's mind, character, and destiny. Every human instinct carries within it a potential far greater than its immediate expression. Sexual desire, in its raw form, calls for release, yet it is also a signal, a symbol pointing toward higher realms of consciousness. When the man acts unconsciously, he allows this energy to dissipate, turning the raw power of creation into fleeting gratification. But when he understands that this energy can be transformed, he begins to see that what was once a drain on vitality can become a source of insight, creativity, and psychological strength. The essence of semen retention is not control for control's sake. It is conscious transformation, a process by which instinct is refined, focused, and elevated. Consider the analogy of fire. Uncontrolled fire consumes indiscriminately. It leaves destruction in its wake. Yet fire, when contained and directed, provides warmth, illuminates darkness, and fuels creation. Sexual energy operates in much the same way. The man who does not understand it is vulnerable to its chaos. He becomes reactive, impulsive, and scattered. expending his energy in ways that serve neither growth nor purpose. But the man who understands its nature learns to channel it, to transmute it into intellectual clarity, emotional depth, and spiritual expansion. This is why those who cultivate retention with awareness often exhibit extraordinary vitality and creativity. They are no longer diffusing their life force into ephemeral pleasures, they are concentrating it, letting it rise from the body into the mind, the heart, and the spirit. This process is not merely metaphorical. It is deeply psychological. Sexual energy is fundamentally tied to the unconscious, the part of ourselves that contains our instincts, drives, and latent potentials. When that energy is wasted unconsciously, a part of the psyche becomes depleted, fragmented, and weakened. But when it is consciously retained and redirected, it nourishes the psyche, providing the fuel necessary for self-reflection, insight, and mastery over the internal world. Retention is thus a form of internal alchemy, transforming instinct into higher faculties of awareness and action. Yet there is a danger in misunderstanding this process. Many men approach retention with a mechanical or ascetic mindset, treating it as a test of endurance rather than an opportunity for transformation. They count days, measure streaks, and congratulate themselves on what they perceive as self-discipline. But if this practice is devoid of consciousness, it becomes hollow. The body may be restrained, but the mind remains enslaved to desire. True retention does not exist in absence alone. It exists in presence, in awareness, in deliberate engagement with one's instinctual nature. It is the mind that transforms the energy, the spirit that gives it direction, and the conscious man who determines its use. The transformation of sexual energy also has profound philosophical implications. It forces the man to confront his own mortality, his instincts, and the raw forces of nature within him. It is a mirror reflecting the tension between instinct and intellect, desire and reason, chaos and order. By observing and directing this energy, he learns the art of mastery, not domination but harmonious alignment. He discovers that he is not merely a passive participant in life's currents, but a conscious agent capable of shaping his inner and outer reality. Furthermore, this energy, when consciously transmuted, amplifies every other pursuit. Creative endeavors flourish, as the focus and drive that once dissipated in impulsive acts are now concentrated. Relationships deepen, as the awareness of desire cultivates presence, empathy, and understanding. Intellectual pursuits become sharper, as the mind is no longer clouded by scattered energies, but instead energized by a focused vitality. The act of retention thus becomes not an end in itself, but a gateway, a means by which instinct is elevated into expression that serves not mere pleasure, but purpose, insight, and mastery. This understanding reframes the very notion of masculinity. Strength is no longer measured in muscular power or sexual conquest, but in the capacity to navigate one's inner world with courage and clarity. The truly powerful man is not the one who suppresses desire, nor the one who indulges it, but the one who knows its nature, respects its potency, and channels it consciously. Sexual energy is not a temptation to be feared or a vice to be conquered. It is a sacred resource, one of the most direct pathways to personal evolution, creativity, and self-realization. In this light, Semen retention becomes an act of consciousness, a daily choice to engage deeply with one's own life force. It is the realization that every impulse carries within it a seed, not of mere pleasure, but of potential, insight, and transformation. To waste it unconsciously is to squander a gift. To engage with it consciously is to become the architect of one's own growth and destiny. So remember this: the power that seems fleeting, the energy that seems uncontrollable, is only so when approached without understanding. When retained and transformed, it becomes a current of profound psychological, sexual, and spiritual potency. The man who embraces this truth no longer views desire as an enemy, nor abstinence as a burden. He sees both as instruments of awakening, tools by which instinct is refined into wisdom, vitality, and mastery. And in the end, the question is not whether you can resist. It is whether you are ready to reclaim the energy that has always been yours, to elevate it beyond the body, and to allow it to shape the man you were always meant to become. Every instinct in a man carries a dual nature. It can either enslave him or elevate him, depending on his relationship with it. Sexual desire, perhaps the most potent of these instincts, exemplifies this duality more clearly than any other. The common misunderstanding is to see sexual energy as either something to indulge or something to suppress, as though these were the only options available. Yet the truth lies elsewhere. Repression and suppression are not mastery. They are forms of avoidance. To deny desire entirely is to leave a shadow untouched, a part of the psyche unresolved, and the consequences of ignoring it can be far more destructive than any fleeting indulgence. When desire is suppressed without understanding, it does not vanish. It lingers, accumulating force in the hidden recesses of the unconscious, like a storm building behind a dam. The man who believes he has conquered it may feel calm on the surface, yet deep within the energy churns, restless and uncontrolled. This tension manifests in subtle ways: irritability, distraction, self-doubt, or compulsive behaviors that erupt without warning. The psyche, deprived of its natural channel for expression, begins to distort. Energy that should have been consciously directed toward growth becomes latent, corrosive, and destructive. The very act meant to preserve power paradoxically dissipates it. The danger is not merely psychological. It is existential. Sexual energy, when unacknowledged, becomes a shadow force that exerts influence over every decision, every relationship, every aspect of life. It is the unseen current that guides thought and action without the man's consent. He may believe himself rational, disciplined, or in control, but the unintegrated energy works beneath the surface, subtly shaping choices and outcomes. Relationships become strained because desire is either denied or projected onto others unconsciously. Ambitions falter because energy that could fuel creativity and focus is trapped in unresolved tension. The man is constantly reacting, never creating, because he has not yet transformed the instinct that drives him. To suppress desire is to fight the natural flow of life itself. It is a denial of a fundamental aspect of being, an act that breeds conflict within the soul. Yet paradoxically, this same instinct holds the key to profound development, if faced consciously. The path to mastery is not through avoidance, but through integration. The man who dares to observe his desire without judgment, who feels it fully yet refuses to be enslaved by it, begins a process of transformation. He converts raw sexual energy into a source of vitality, insight, and creative force. He discovers that desire in its essence is not a threat, but a messenger, a signal pointing toward unrealized potential. Integration requires courage. It demands that the man confront not only the instinct itself, but the shadow it represents, the hidden fears, attachments, and projections that lie beneath conscious awareness. Sexual energy becomes a mirror, reflecting the parts of himself that are fragmented, ignored, or unexpressed. When he faces this reflection, he gains the opportunity to reclaim power that has always been his. Suppression leaves him blind. Integration awakens vision. By acknowledging and channeling desire consciously, he harnesses a force that has the potential to elevate every aspect of life. From intellectual pursuits to relationships, from physical vitality to spiritual growth. There is a rhythm to this work, a careful balance between engagement and restraint. It is not about denial, nor is it about indulgence. It is about understanding the nature of the energy, observing its movements, and directing it with awareness. The man who learns this rhythm discovers that the same instinct which once threatened to destroy him can now serve as a guiding current, a source of profound strength. He begins to experience life not as a series of impulses and reactions, but as a field of conscious choice, where energy flows according to intention rather than compulsion. Philosophically, this process mirrors the alchemical work of transformation. Base energy, instinctual and raw, becomes refined through awareness. It is not extinguished, it is elevated. The sexual impulse, once perceived as a danger, becomes a tool for the development of character, intellect, and spirit. What was once a source of distraction becomes a wellspring of focus. What was once impulsive desire becomes disciplined creativity. What was once merely physical sensation becomes a bridge to higher consciousness. The man who suppresses desire remains small, bound by the chains of avoidance. The man who indulges desire unconsciously is equally small, bound by the chains of compulsion. But the man who integrates it consciously becomes whole. He no longer fights against himself, nor does he give in to fleeting pleasure. He channels the instinct that is at the very heart of his being into conscious action, aligning body, mind, and spirit. In this alignment, he discovers a vitality that is sustainable, a power that is enduring, and a freedom that is unshakable. Every act of conscious transformation begins with observation, seeing the energy for what it is, without judgment, without shame, without fear. Only then can it be directed. Only then can desire become the current that drives creation rather than destruction. And when a man masters this current, he steps into a form of sovereignty over himself that no external circumstance can undermine. So understand this clearly. The danger is never the instinct itself. It is the denial of it, the repression, the refusal to see what is already within. Desire, when ignored or suppressed, becomes a destructive shadow. Desire, when integrated, becomes the source of mastery. The choice is yours, and it is the most fundamental choice a man can make, to either remain a victim of his own instincts or to rise and channel them consciously into life, creation and purpose. The lesson is simple, yet profound. Do not fear your instincts. Do not flee from them. Face them, understand them, transform them. In doing so, you will reclaim the energy that has always been yours and awaken the power to live fully, consciously and without compromise. Every man carries within him a shadow, a part of his psyche that is hidden, denied or unacknowledged. It is neither good nor evil. It simply exists, containing instincts, impulses, and desires that the conscious mind often refuses to see. Sexual energy is one of the most potent aspects of this shadow. It is a force that demands acknowledgement, yet many men either suppress it, fearing its power, or indulge it blindly, unaware of its deeper significance. To ignore this shadow is to leave an entire domain of the psyche unexplored, and the cost of such neglect is far greater than most realize. The shadow is dangerous not because it is evil, but because it is unconscious. When sexual energy exists solely in the unconscious, it does not disappear. It acts behind the scenes, shaping thoughts, behaviors, and decisions without the man's awareness. A man may think he is in control, yet his suppressed desires influence him subtly, guiding choices in ways that undermine his life, relationships, and sense of self. Unacknowledged desire manifests as irritability, compulsions, or destructive behaviors, often leaving the man puzzled about why he repeats patterns he wishes to escape. The shadow, in essence, rules him from invisibility, feeding on neglect, yet the shadow is not merely a source of danger, it is also a source of immense power. The same sexual energy that threatens to consume a man when ignored can, when integrated, become a force for creativity, vitality, and self-mastery. The key is conscious engagement, to recognize desire not as an enemy but as a messenger. The impulses, fantasies, and longings that stir within the depths of the psyche are indicators of energy, waiting to be transmuted. They are raw life force, neither moral nor immoral, which can either be wasted in unconscious indulgence or elevated through conscious awareness. Integration of the shadow requires courage because it forces the man to confront aspects of himself he would rather avoid. It demands honesty about the fantasies, attachments, and unresolved impulses that have shaped his actions. To face this truth is to recognize that the energy he has often feared or suppressed carries gifts, clarity, focus, and creative power. By acknowledging the shadow, he gains access to the wellspring of his own instincts and learns to channel it intentionally rather than being carried helplessly by it. The shadow becomes a guide, revealing both the areas where the psyche is fragmented and the potential for transformation that lies dormant within him. Sexual energy, in particular, carries the unique capacity to illuminate these hidden parts. When retained and observed, it rises from the body into consciousness, acting like a lamp in a darkened room. The thoughts, emotions, and desires it awakens can be uncomfortable, but they are necessary for growth. Each impulse becomes an opportunity to explore what is truly driving the psyche: ambition, fear, longing, or unfulfilled creative potential. The man who refuses to explore this territory remains fragmented. The man who ventures into it gains coherence, self-mastery, and insight. The process of integration is not suppression or denial. It is a form of alchemy, an intentional transformation of raw instinct into directed energy. The desires that once led to fleeting pleasure or destructive behaviors are now consciously utilized. They fuel intellectual pursuits, artistic creation, and personal development, They enhance relationships because the man no longer projects his unconscious needs onto others, but meets them from a place of presence and awareness. The shadow, once feared, becomes a source of inner authority and confidence. There is a rhythm to this work, a careful observation of instinct, a refusal to act unconsciously, and a deliberate redirection of energy toward conscious purpose. This is not asceticism, nor is it indulgence. It is mastery. The sexual impulses, when integrated, teach the man self-discipline, while also revealing the depth of his vitality. The energy that once demanded release and threatened depletion becomes a current of creativity and strength. Every sensation, every thought, every desire is acknowledged and refined, rising from the level of mere instinct into the realm of conscious action and purposeful living. Philosophically, the shadow teaches that true power is not obtained by fighting the instincts, nor by succumbing to them. It is obtained by facing them, by learning from them, and by transforming them into energy that serves the higher self. The man who integrates his sexual shadow does not suppress passion. He elevates it. He does not deny desire. He channels it. He does not fear the impulses within him. He observes, understands, and harnesses them. In doing so, he becomes a sovereign of his own inner world rather than a victim of forces he cannot see. Every man faces this challenge, yet few rise to meet it. Most continue to live divided lives, unaware that the very energy they chase or deny could have been the key to mastery, creativity, and fulfillment. Integration demands courage, vigilance, and presence. It requires that the man refuse the comfort of ignorance and embrace the challenge of self-awareness. But the reward is profound. Sexual energy, once a potential source of shame, guilt, or distraction, becomes a vital current of power, clarity, and insight. So understand this: your shadow, your sexual energy, your instincts are not enemies to be conquered or ignored. They are teachers, messengers, and sources of profound inner strength. The danger lies only in neglect, letting them operate unconsciously, shaping your life from behind the scenes. The opportunity lies in conscious integration, observing, understanding, and directing this energy so that it serves your higher self. The man who integrates his shadow discovers a power that is both subtle and immense, the ability to act from awareness rather than compulsion, to transform instinct into purpose, and to live fully aligned with his inner nature. In the mastery of the shadow, he finds freedom, the freedom to experience desire without being enslaved by it, the freedom to create from the depths of his being, and the freedom to step into the fullness of his potential. Remember this: the shadow is not the enemy. It is the doorway. To integrate it is to reclaim the energy that has always been yours and to rise to the level of conscious power that few ever achieve. The choice is yours, to ignore it and remain a victim, or to face it and become sovereign. The culmination of mastery over sexual energy is not merely retention, nor is it mere understanding of desire. It is the conscious transmutation of that energy into a force that shapes the entirety of one's life. Most men fail to realize that sexual energy is far more than a biological drive. It is a reservoir of potential, a concentrated life force that influences thought, creativity, emotion, and spiritual awareness. When this energy is wasted unconsciously, the psyche is fragmented, attention is scattered, and vitality diminishes. But when it is consciously harnessed, it becomes the current that fuels every meaningful act, every creative endeavor, every moment of profound insight. To truly harness sexual energy, one must first understand that it is intimately linked to attention and intention. The mind and the body are not separate vessels. They are intertwined channels through which life flows. When a man ejaculates without consciousness, the energy leaves the body, but its imprint remains in the mind. Distraction, exhaustion, and a subtle weakening of willpower. Each act of unconscious release is a surrender of personal authority. Conversely, when a man cultivates retention and channels his sexual energy intentionally, he gains a sharper focus, greater emotional resilience, and the ability to engage life with clarity. Desire becomes not a distraction, but a compass, guiding him toward endeavors that align with his higher purpose. This transmutation is a psychological process. Sexual energy, like all instinctual forces, is primal and immediate. Left unchecked, it drives impulsive behavior, fleeting pleasure, and reactive emotion. But when consciously observed, it rises from the body into the mind, where it can fuel creativity, insight, and self-realization. Consider the artist who channels passion into a painting, the philosopher who turns longing into contemplation, or the entrepreneur who converts drive into innovation. In each case, sexual energy has been consciously transmuted, transformed from a biological impulse into a tool for self-expression and impact. The principle is the same for every man. Mastery comes not from denial but from direction, yet transmutation is not automatic. It demands discipline, self-awareness, and courage. The first step is recognition, acknowledging sexual energy as a powerful current rather than a nuisance or a temptation. The second is observation, understanding the triggers, fantasies, and emotional responses that arise with desire. And the third is deliberate redirection, consciously moving the energy into activities that cultivate growth, whether intellectual, creative, or spiritual. In this way, the instinct that once threatened to scatter the self becomes the vehicle through which the self is expanded. Philosophically, this process reveals a profound truth. Energy flows where attention goes. The man who allows sexual energy to dissipate unconsciously is surrendering to chaos. The man who directs it consciously is creating order within his inner world. Each act of transmutation strengthens the psyche, fortifies willpower, and cultivates an inner authority that extends far beyond sexuality. The same energy that once fueled fleeting gratification now fuels clarity, courage, and purpose. It is the difference between living reactively and living deliberately. This transformation is also deeply ethical. To consciously direct sexual energy is to acknowledge one's power without abusing it, to recognize desire without harming others, and to cultivate self-mastery without becoming rigid or repressive. It is the path of responsibility, understanding that the impulses within us are neither enemies nor mere pleasures, but resources that can be elevated into wisdom and strength. In mastering this current, the man learns to act from his center, rather than from instinctual compulsion, aligning his desires with his highest intentions. The spiritual dimension of this process cannot be overlooked. Sexual energy is at its essence creative force, the same force that drives life itself. When consciously retained and transmuted, it becomes a bridge between the physical and the higher self. It awakens insight, inspires profound contemplation, and generates a sense of vitality that permeates every aspect of life. The man who cultivates this energy is not merely abstinent. He is awakened. He experiences life with intensity, depth, and presence, because his energy is no longer scattered, but concentrated, aligned, and directed. There is a subtle irony in all of this. The very energy that has the potential to destroy focus, scatter attention, and weaken the psyche is the same energy that can, when consciously harnessed, transform a man's mind, body, and spirit. The difference lies entirely in awareness. The unconscious man experiences sexual energy as a threat or a temptation. The conscious man experiences it as a tool, a current to be directed toward creation, mastery, and self-realization. This distinction is profound. It is the line between fragmentation and wholeness, between wasted potential and actualized power. Every day, every choice, every moment of conscious attention is an opportunity to transmute sexual energy. Each time a man observes desire without surrendering, each time he channels his vitality into purpose rather than distraction, he strengthens the connection between instinct and consciousness. Over time, this practice reshapes the mind, fortifies the character, and elevates the spirit. Sexual energy becomes not a fleeting pleasure, but a sustainable force for personal transformation. The ultimate truth is simple. Mastery of sexual energy is mastery of life itself. By consciously retaining and transmuting it, a man cultivates focus, vitality, creativity, and insight. He no longer gives away his power unconsciously. He claims it, shapes it, and directs it toward his highest purpose. This is not a theoretical concept. It is a lived reality, accessible to any man willing to confront desire with courage, to observe it with honesty, and to channel it with intention. So understand this clearly. The energy that threatens to scatter you, exhaust you, or weaken you is the very energy that, when mastered, can define the trajectory of your life. The power you seek externally, focus, creativity, clarity, presence, resides within you, encoded in your sexual energy. Retain it, transmute it, and you awaken a force that no circumstance can diminish, a vitality that no distraction can steal, and a consciousness capable of shaping your destiny. This is the ultimate act of sovereignty, to harness what is most primal within you and direct it consciously toward the man you are meant to become.